Red Sox get swept by the Pirates in their second series of the 2023 season.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I want to welcome you back into the Locked On Red Sox podcast, and thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. I'm your host, Jake Ignaszewski, and here, as always, with my co-host, NESN, Lauren Willand. And I can't believe I'm saying these words, but the Boston Red Sox were just swept by the Pittsburgh Pirates. And if you listen to Ethan and I's preview episode with the Locked On Pirates crossover, we both agreed that we thought that the Red Sox were going to win this series 2-1. But, you know, they lost the first game 7-6, and then the next two games were practically identical in score of 4-1. And I'm still kind of in disbelief.
You know, it's weird because they started off, you know, they had the strong wins against the Orioles. You have the momentum going into the series with the Pirates, and you think things are going to be okay. And then it just wasn't after the first game. I mean, the first game, you're like, oh, okay, like, all right, we still could win the series. And then you go into games 2 and 3, and it's just what happened to the offense? What happened to the defense even? There was some stupid, sloppy baseball in Wednesday's game on both sides between the Red Sox and the Pirates. But I was just, you know, watching this, like, I don't want to say, oh, I can't believe they got swept, but I'm surprised they didn't win the series. But is now, you know, we're 5-6 games into the season. They're still not going to panic or anything, but it begs the question, well, what Red Sox team are we going to get? Are we going to get the one against the Orioles, or are we going to get the one against the Pirates? And if it's the latter, oh boy, we're going to have a hard time staying positive this season.
Yeah, and it kind of seemed like the Orioles, you know, sort of, I don't know, gave the Red Sox the bad defense Gatorade. I don't know what it was, but like they practically seemed like identical to what we saw in the Orioles series, who were just throwing the ball all over the place, you know, making defensive errors left and right. But, you know, I don't want to like throw myself under the bus, but, you know, maybe I should have knocked on wood when I said there was going to be roller coaster and waves in terms of like the offensive output, because, you know, I'm like, there's going to be at least 1 or 2 games, you know, at some point where, you know, the offense just completely falls flat, and, you know, they only get a few hits here or there, you know, one runner gets shut out. Didn't expect that it was going to happen, you know, 2 games after, you know, I said that. And it's tough to really sort of, you know, specifically judge this series on one specific unit not doing well. You know, at the end of the day, Alex Cora, you know, pretty much said the Pirates kicked our butt. We haven't played good baseball starting the season. But, you know, the nice thing is, at least outside of the Crawford start, Nick Pivetta and Corey Kluber looked really good.
Yeah, Nick Pivetta, I feel like he turned in a fine start. I think I categorized it as good, not great,
Right.
but it was, I think he did his job. You had that stupid pass ball that was nothing to do with him, with Reese McGuire, that should have ended the inning, but nothing you can do there. And then Corey Kluber looked much better on Wednesday than he did in his opening day start. So there's definitely positives to take away. But when I'm looking, you know, when I'm looking at the pitching, I was like, Pivetta and Kluber, yes, but Pivetta shouldn't be somebody who's turning in one of the best starts the first time through the rotation.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's early, and we've talked about, we're not putting much stock into the first 2 starts or so with starters, but I thought Kluber did his job. And I mean, they were working really fast until that disastrous 7th inning on Wednesday. But yeah, I think that it's a positive to see Pivetta come out strong in his first start, and then Kluber kind of bounce back. I mean, it's weird saying bounce back in a loss, but you look at what he did, and I mean, the offense just wasn't there the last 2 games. It's you score almost 30 runs in the first 3 games, 9 times 3 is 27, and then it just shuts down. It's so, I mean, baseball's so weird because this is exactly what can happen. All these runs, and all of a sudden it's like no one knows how to swing a bat.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just, the nature of, 162. You never know, what team you're going to get in a certain stretch. All sort of depends on, the pitching matchup, how guys show up that day. And it's always funny because, since, some of my friends know that I know baseball, they always want like betting advice. And they're like, let's look at like who's on the mound. That would dictate if it's a winner or a loss. I'm like, not always. It's baseball. You never know how a pitcher's really going to show up. And, Nick Pivetta, I mean, looking at, a number 5 starter, if you were somebody who's a casual Red Sox fan or barely even, watched the Red Sox from a different state, you look at sort of his line of 5 innings, only allowing 3 hits, 1 earned run, 3 runs that were unearned, and then walking 3 guys and striking out 6. You'd say that's a pretty productive start. And, we've talked about this. You sort of know what you're going to get from Nick Pivetta, but at the same time, you don't. He's going to give you some of these starts here or there, and then some of them he's going to blow up. But, the other guy that you got to point to as well is Josh Winkowski. I mean, he's looked like a completely different pitcher ever since spring training. Went 3 innings, only allowing 2 hits, striking out 3 and allowing 1 earned run. And even Cora mentioned it. I forget exactly what show he was on, but he had a radio interview, and he said, the one that's really intriguing us right now is Winkowski. He said, he did an amazing job yesterday, did a good job early against Baltimore, and with his stuff ticking up to 96, 97, pretty incredible, a slider that fast.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people were talking about, him being with this team. Is he going to be the odd man out once this team gets healthy? But he's making a case. I don't know if he heard all the negative things said around him. I don't know if he's on social media or anything like that, but he's looked good. He's striking out batters. He's limiting his walks, and he looks like he's very comfortable on the mound. And I think that's obviously very important, but he's definitely somebody who could be an X factor for this team, whether that's, it's going to be too little too late and he has like this fantastic season. You don't want that to go to waste, but he could be, all of a sudden, he could be somebody who gets you, through the 6th and 7th inning. Maybe he gave you 3 innings the other day. So not like, a little bit longer than a relief pitcher, but not super duper long relief guy. But he's proving through the minimal starts we've seen, small sample size this year, but through those small sample sizes, he has proven he can be trusted.
And, one thing that we not only saw in the second game, but also the third game, and this was very prevalent during the Orioles series, is the amount of stolen bases that the Red Sox have allowed.
Oh, my God.
Alex Spear tweeted, he said they've given up 14 consecutive steals to open the year, the first team to do that throughout the first 6 games since the 1987 Expos. It's bad when the last time somebody did it, the team's not even around.
Yeah, I wrote an article about the stolen bases on Wednesday just because it's a glaring issue. And yes, it's not all the time that those base runners turn into runs, but you're giving up that opportunity. You're giving them the opportunity to put their runners in scoring position. And then all of a sudden, maybe a single gets that runner home now because they stole second base or they stole third base. And it's something that, yes, it's an adjustment, that pitch clock, but you have to adjust. You could not have runners running all over you. You cannot give up those free bases and put runners in scoring position. You just can't, because the opponents, first 2 teams here have figured out how to run on the Red Sox and hit the Red Sox.
Yeah, something's got to change. And I get it's early, but when you haven't done it since the team in 1987, like, something has to change. And I think that you can't point to, it's a Connor Wong issue, it's a Reese McGuire issue, but they're the only 2 guys who you can really blame in this aspect. And maybe it's a thing where Bloom's looking at it like, shoot, maybe Christian Vasquez's defense was maybe a little bit undervalued when we either traded him during the trade deadline or offered him a contract during free agency, and now they're really starting to see it, I guess.
They definitely are. And I know you said not place blame on one catcher, but they're running all over Reese McGuire. He can't throw anyone out, and it's he threw out 42% of the runners last year while he was with the Red Sox, and after he got traded to Boston. So it's not, it's I don't want to say it's super uncommon, but it's just a little weird. I don't know if it's just Pittsburgh is very fast. The Orioles are very fast. There's a lot of speed there. But you have to get those runners out, and you have to make sure that you are protecting the plate, protecting the bases in front of you. But they have, opponents so far have really figured out how to run on Reese McGuire. And, Ryan Brazier too, with his windup, and they realize that the Orioles realize that the second he gets into his windup, you go, because he's not coming out of that windup for a few seconds and you are golden.
And especially with the day off on Friday, I think, the catching room needs to sit down with Jason Varitek, look at the tape and figure it out.
Yes, 100%. Something definitely needs to happen, because you can't look at these two catchers and say, oh yeah, this is it. This is good enough, because good enough is not getting you anywhere. And you need serviceable catchers. No, you don't need a catcher to hit 20, 30 bombs, but you need them to be able to throw runners out here and there. And it's early, yes, but the early stats do not bode well for Reese McGuire. And I just don't know what's going on there. And he's got to figure it out. You've got to throw those runners out.
And the other factor too that I wanted to point out before we move off this topic is especially with, how it can affect a pitcher and the way that he approaches an up at bat. When you really think about it, I think you made a great point. When, a guy steals a base, it doesn't always correlate to them scoring runs, but at the same time, a guy on first base rather than second base, the pitcher now has to focus on, is he going to try and steal third? And then when they continuously do it, now when any runners are on, the pitcher's more focused on, is the guy going to run on me, rather than focusing on the batter and actually throwing strikes to get outs.
Right. It changes, you said it changes their whole dynamic. And who knows, if they're having a really good game, that could just throw a wrench into it. If they're having a bad game, that's going to throw a bigger wrench into it. And it's all about the approach when it comes to pitching. Yes. But the last thing that, especially Red Sox pitching, the last thing they need is to worry about the runner trying to advance to third or trying to pick off the runner. That's the last thing that these pitchers need. They need to focus on just keep throwing strikes, get the batter out, don't worry about the runner. But it's hard not to when all they do is just steal.
And yeah, we did see, the first weekend this year compared to last weekend. I'm pretty sure Rob Bradford put it out, and I even looked up the numbers, and they're staggering. The 70 stolen bases compared to, I think it was like 39, 49 last season. And, obviously, this probably isn't only a Red Sox issue, but, as I already said, when you're starting to, be compared to a team in 1987, something needs to be fixed. But, as we continue to, see this Red Sox team, try and gain their footing again after a relatively productive Orioles series, we need to continue to try and up the confidence of fans to want to bet on this team to ultimately win against the Tigers in this next series. But if you want to bet on this next series, the best place to do that is over on FanDuel. And especially with the NBA playoffs also almost here, now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet does not win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from money line to point scores and threes drained. And the other thing that I love about FanDuel, you can also do player props. Christian Arroyo hit, Masataka Yoshida hit. Also, if you're feeling, even though, we're speaking down a little bit of the Red Sox right now, if you're feeling super duper confident, Red Sox World Series, Red Sox playoffs, FanDuel is the place to do that. Plus, they also allow you to combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So we spoke about Tuesday's game, but now let's talk about the circus that was Wednesday's game. And it really started out with the Pirates pitcher Mitch Keller one-hitting the Red Sox until Casas hit a double in the 7th inning. And in my mind, I think this was more of Keller being on his game rather than the Red Sox bats being cold. With what he was able to do with his pinpoint control was unbelievable. I looked at it in the 5th inning. He was throwing 77% of his pitches for strikes. And I think it was the Christian Arroyo strikeout. It was on the outer part of the zone. Some could say it's a borderline strike, but I mean, when you're getting it right on the corner of the strike zone, it's tough to hit anybody.
He looked so good. He was in control. He commanded the strike zone. He was just on point. Everything about what he was doing on Wednesday was almost perfect. And he knew what pitchers to throw. He was working efficiently. He was working so fast, and he was going, 1, 2, 3 through these innings. He was working, and if he had runners on, if there was ever that, I mean, it never seemed like runners were on, but he found a way to get out of every single inning. And very quickly, he was up and down through the order, 1, 2, 3. Just a really, really good performance from him. Bad for the Red Sox, but very good for the Pirates.
I agree. And, another guy who also did well on the mound, and we already spoke about it a tiny bit, but Corey Kluber, especially after what we saw on opening day, he's not, your general front of the line starter, but he is in this case. He's the number one starter in the Red Sox rotation. So you want him to start the rotation off when it flips over from 5 to 1 to be as effective as he can. And it was nice to see him go 5 innings, only allowing 3 hits, 1 earned run, and striking out 2 batters. And his control looked a lot better. And that's one thing that he spoke about post game. I was able to be a lot more competitive with my pitches rather than I was against the Orioles on opening day.
And you look at the walks too, only 1 walk. So that's a good thing to look at too after his walk heavy opening day. But we talked about this too, how maybe Nick Pivetta could be the one to set the tone going into the series finale, and Kluber can kind of build off that. And then that goes into the next starter and then the next starter. So hopefully we kind of see that domino effect. Now it'd be good if the bats woke up, but you look at Kluber's second start, and if you just do number to number comparisons, it was much better. You liked what you saw. I think that he gave you reason to be optimistic about his next start and that he can be reliable. I just wish the offense could figure it out, because I don't want this to be like, a Jacob deGrom thing or Rick Porcello when he was here. I felt like Rick Porcello could never get run support. And you just hate to see a solid start, a quality start like the one Kluber had on Wednesday go to waste because the bats can't do anything. And yes, Keller was incredible, but somehow, some way, you have to find a way to get that ball in play.
Yeah, and it doesn't help when the guys behind you are doing sloppy defense.
Oh
and,
my God.
We saw that multiple times in Wednesday's game. And Corey, spoke about it. He said, when you make bad decisions, you put yourself in a bad spot. And the one that was really glaring is when Yoshida. He should have thrown to second base. Tried to throw to third. Devers ended up allowing the ball to trickle home, then went past Reese McGuire, and then we see Cruz end up being able to advance to third base. And that's just one where you're sort of just kind of confused. And, Cora, when speaking about it, he's like, yeah, we should have thrown to second, but he wouldn't have got him out anyways, but it would have avoided a mess like we saw in allowing the runners to advance.
There were so many things in that sequence that could have been avoided to make it not so disastrous. And Yoshida, he's still getting used to Major League Baseball. And also, I mean, maybe it was just a panic throw, but Devers, like, what are you doing just standing there, letting it go through you? And then he's not at third. And then he's very lucky that he didn't blow out his knee, that Cruz didn't get hurt. I mean, Cruz was being tended to for a couple of minutes. I was like, oh God, like this could be much worse than it looks. But I'm glad that it wasn't at the end of the day. But Devers was shaking off his hand a little bit and his arm, but with the off day Friday, maybe he'll just get some extra rest and it's just sore. But that was such a messy play. We were all in the office watching the game, and we're just like, what is going on? But what happened? And that 7th inning, it was just a mess. I was just, they kept showing the play, and I was like, I just don't understand how this unraveled so fast. And I'm like, this is either going to be foreshadowing for what the rest of the season entails, or they're going to learn from it and be like, oh, we're a bunch of idiots. We're never doing that again. Like that, we can't afford to make those kinds of mistakes. And it's just, I think I used disastrous on my Twitter. I'm like, it's the only way to describe it. Like my brother texts me, he's like, what the hell is going on? And I'm like, I don't know. Baseball's weird, and it shouldn't be this kind of weird.
And, we saw a lot last year how defense really hurt the team, and especially, allowing stupid runs that could have been avoided. Obviously the first one that comes to mind, at least last season, was Duran with the inside the park grand slam. But, you could also semi-point. I'm trying to like find any excuse, maybe not the best word, but like any reasoning for why we could see some of these defensive mistakes. Maybe it's just these players coming back from the WBC only had a few days to really get back into the groove of things and get used to playing together on the same field in spring training. You didn't really have a long stretch of everybody playing consistently together on the field, especially leading up to the season. So maybe, once you start to get more comfortable with each other, you start to get a little bit more in a groove, and the mental errors or the defensive errors start to minimize a little bit more. But I think that this is one thing, and Cora brought it up plenty in his post-game press conference. Like, they got to clean this up quick.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's the key word there is quick, because this isn't something where they're still winning games and they're getting by. They're not getting by. And this is something that 100% needs to be turned around as quickly as possible. And as quickly as possible, we're hoping Thursday and then Saturday and Sunday. So, I mean, I could sit here and say it's an easy fix, but I'm not on the field. I'm not the one, out there every day, but there has to be something where you sit down and you're like, okay, just mentally prepare, kind of mentally go through what went wrong and just fix it, make it right. Because you said it, like, these runs can be avoided, and they shouldn't be losing games because they don't know how to play basic baseball and losing the sight of the fundamentals of the game.
And I think one thing, just thinking about it, sort of how we reacted to the Orioles series sort of might have been an alarm for this series of the, thank God we got by,
right.
One run win, obviously a win's a win, but at the same time could have been foreshadowing what could be coming, not only with the Pirates series, hopefully not with the Tigers series, but I think especially when you get those close wins, yes, it's a sigh of relief, but at the same time, you'd rather have a convincing win like we saw the 9-5 against the Orioles rather than, a 10-9, right. What I mean? And so hopefully they're able to, get more of those convincing wins down the line, against the Tigers in the next series. But before we speak about, the injury updates with Whitlock and Bello and more into the Tigers series, Lauren wants to talk to you about Ultimate Pro Baseball GM.
This has been one of my favorite games for the last couple of weeks since I've played it. And I'm somebody who does not like playing games on their phone. I'm more just like either a console kind of person or on my laptop. But I love playing this game on my phone. And I always thought I could be some sort of good baseball GM. And it turns out I'm just not. It's not that easy. And if you've had the same thought, maybe you're like, hey, I kind of want to run a baseball team. Then Pro Baseball GM, you have to download it. You can download it right in the App Store. Use the QR code right there. This game allows you to manage every strategic aspect of a baseball franchise. So you play through seasons. You hopefully lead your franchise and your fans to glory. I didn't, but maybe you can. And you try to build a historic dynasty. And you are responsible for quite literally everything. So you hire the coaches and the staff. You have to manage the team finances. You scout and you draft players, which means you also have to manage those difficult personalities. Injuries happen, and you navigate your franchise through free agency, through trades, through all the ups and downs of a baseball season. All this in a challenging and very realistic game world. Ultimate Baseball GM is completely free and also playable offline, so you don't even need Wi-Fi. You can play on the go as you want, when you want to. We're all having a lot of fun Locked On here playing this game. Many of us are not very good, so if you want to take advantage of that and playing one of the hosts here, take advantage of it, download it, because you will probably beat us. And Locked On Red Sox listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in the game store. So make sure to check that out. Download the game. Just visit probaseballgm.com or scan that QR code if you are watching on YouTube, or look it up in any of the app stores. That's probaseballgm.com. Ultimate Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today.
So even though some of these starts from these pitchers in the Red Sox rotation have sort of caused you to hold your breath hoping it goes okay, luckily reinforcements are coming. Garrett Whitlock, Alex Cora said there's a good chance he can make his season debut on Tuesday. Looked really good in his Woo Sox rehab assignment. Brayan Bello also threw a 5-inning, 72-pitch extended spring training game in Fort Myers on Wednesday. Ended up striking out 8 batters. Definitely looked good from what we saw, obviously, in his final spring training start. But luckily, guys are starting to come back. And I think the biggest question mark is where the shuffling going to happen in the rotation. What are we really going to see from these guys early on? And I think at least when these guys make their first few starts, got to give it a little bit of a grain of salt, need to get their footing right.
They do. And I'm encouraged by what I've seen. And I think that's a good start. You don't want Brayan Bello or Garrett Whitlock getting lit up. And I think I think it was one of our commenters. I think it was our loyal listener, Johnny, who said that Whitlock and Bello have to be that 1-2 punch. And I'm like, that's terrifying because of the people that they have on this roster who probably should be that 1-2 punch, but aren't. And that's putting a lot, I don't want to say it's putting a lot of pressure on them, but they can be those players. Mm-hmm. And if they can be, that changes the entire rotation. Derek and I have been talking since the offseason how this team truly needs an ace, and they don't have one. Bello certainly could be one. I don't know if this year will be the year, but they have a lot riding on them, and they have the chance to, like I just said, put this rotation or to completely have this rotation do a 180. Because if you get solid production from the both of them as starters, I will let go of any Garrett Whitlock to the bullpen talk. I will let that narrative go. I will let that go from my brain if he can be a solid starter. And he needs to be right now. The Red Sox need help in this starting rotation. It's a log jam regardless. It'll be very interesting to see how Cora handles this, but I'm excited to see them get back, especially with how productive they've been in their rehab starts.
And I think, the easy answer for this is, Whitlock replaces Houck, Bello replaces Cutter Crawford.
Right.
But the big thing that I was just thinking about is, where does Sale go? Are you going to keep Sale at number 2 if he goes out against if he goes out against the Tigers and allows another 8 runs? I mean, I think you got to think about it. And I understand the pride aspect, but I think he would even tell you, if he ends up, doing crap throughout the next few games, I think you got to start evaluating sort of, the amount of pressure that you're putting on the guy to be that number 2 starter. And maybe it's the type of situation where you put him up against the right lineup, but you don't want to put yourself in that situation either. And, another guy who's also coming back as well is James Paxton, ended up throwing 3 innings in Fort Myers. And Corey ended up saying, looking really good velo. He went up to 95. And so apparently he's going to stay there for the rest of the week. He said, we'll see where he pitches next. But, that's another big question mark. We'll speak more about this, in the future, depending on where Bello and Whitlock and how they end up doing in the rotation, and where James Paxton fits in this is another big question mark. But, starting to look at Chris Sale starting against the Tigers, with me, I loved what he said about, taking ownership, but like, it sort of reminds me tiny bit going into football of like Cam Newton, when he wasn't playing up to par with the Patriots. Yes, I love you saying that you're not playing well. I love you saying that you're going to do better next game. Then play better next game.
That's the thing where I love that Chris Sale holds himself accountable, and I love that he does not make excuses. But like you said, like, how many more times can he say that until he gets on the right track? And only he can fix that. And I know that Chris Sale is very hard on himself, and the holding himself accountable is something that is very important. But there still needs to be something here where he needs to produce. And listen, he hasn't pitched since last summer. He's probably pretty rusty. He's also getting older. And the injuries he dealt with, he blew off his pinky, he broke his wrist, he had the Tommy John a couple years ago. He needs to completely heal from everything. And if it's like 2, 3, 4 starts where he's still a little rusty, I'm okay with that. Yeah. But he needs to, no one's asking him to be 2018 Chris Sale. They're just asking him to be a serviceable Chris Sale. And in his first start, he wasn't. But I'm really excited to see how he tries to bounce back. And I'm excited to see Paxton and kind of what his role will be. Will he even have a role? Is he going to be serviceable? He looks good, and he looks like he's recovering very well from everything last year. And with Sale, I mean, he's got to go out and pitch well. It's that simple, and it's easy for us to sit here and say that. And now he just needs to do that against the Tigers, and I hope he can. I want to see him do well, because he should be a very important part to this rotation. And we know that there's a good pitcher there. He does have nasty stuff. Right. It's just he needs to find it, and he's going to be a little rusty, and that's okay. But he just can't be like that all season.
I think the key for him is just getting his slider back in action.
Yes.
How it usually is. I mean, that's really the pitch that makes him the dominant starter. The rest of the ones are just complimentary. And if that one's off, then the rest of his pitches, we're going to see go all over the place out on the field for hits and runs and everything else. And, I don't have the expectation in my mind that he is going to do what we saw Corey Kluber do on Wednesday, do a complete 180 and look much, much better. All I'm hoping for is if Chris Sale allows 3 runs rather than 7. That's all. Just a gradual progression. Like, that's all I care about. And,
Right.
you know, I agree with you. I think having the mindset of, you know, this isn't going to be 2018 Chris Sale is a great one, and just hoping for a gradual progression. And that's all I guess you can really ask for. And I think, you know, yes, we've talked about this, that the Red Sox didn't put around him, you know, different pitchers that would sort of be able to carry him if he wasn't giving you what you really expected. And maybe the Red Sox had unrealistic expectations for what Chris Sale was going to give you. But in my mind, you kind of got to expect this if the guy hasn't really done too much since 2019. But at the same time, you know, that's the front office's deal, and all we do is just watch the game and react to it and talk about it. But praying that we see a much different and much better Chris Sale. But we did ask you over on Twitter what your thoughts were on the Red Sox series against the Pirates. And I wanted to start off, Red Sox watcher, bad. Period. Couldn't agree more. Great summarization. And then we got Tiger Smith. He said, brain is mush after that series. Don't have any thoughts.
Same. Well, we had thoughts, but I feel the brain is mush thing. Feel that.
And then James Davenport, he said Kluber, one of the bright spots of the series. And, you know, we spoke about it. I think that's the best way to look at it. You know, definitely a plus in terms of, you know, what Pivetta, but also Kluber gave you as well. James Gardner said flawed fundamentals. Yeah, definitely got to fix those. Definitely got to clean that up. And then we got Ken Matias. He said, just sad that they should have easily been swept or won 2 out of 3. I agree with you, but coulda, shoulda, woulda. That's all that you know, I guess you can think, but can't go in the past. Can't change anything. Exactly. On to Detroit, and we're going to keep you posted about everything that's happening surrounding the Boston Red Sox 5 days a week. So if you have not yet, make sure to subscribe over on YouTube or whatever audio platform that you listen to. And also, kind of exciting, the next episode that's going to be coming out, Alex Rodriguez. He's going to be talking about his favorite Red Sox Yankees rivalry memories. Same with the Yankees play-by-play announcer, Michael Kay. He's also on that episode as well. And then right after that, Bobby Delbeck, he's coming on the podcast. We're going to hear from him and his mindset going into his season with the Woo Sox. But with all that, also make sure to follow us over on Twitter. It's LO_Red Sox. If you want to be part of some of those responses that I just spoke out of, you know, listeners and fans giving us their opinions and us reacting to it, make sure to follow us over there. Also follow myself. It's at Jake Iggy, and also Lauren. 3 laws, Lauren, with 4 R's. We want to thank you so much, as always, for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. Now make your second listen and check out Locked On Fantasy Baseball. Win your league by listening to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy strategies. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball wherever you get your podcasts and over on YouTube. I've been listening, trying to figure out ways to, you know, get ahead of my competition, waiver wire, you know, free agents, everything like that. They do a great job of updating you, everything that's been happening thus far in fantasy baseball. And also make sure to check out all the other Locked On podcasts that are on the network. They've been doing a great job throughout opening week to update all, you know, their listeners and fans of their specific teams. And if you want to, you know, get a little bit of preview for the Tigers and what they've been doing, make sure to go over and check out Locked On Tigers. But as always, we hope everybody has a great rest of their day, and we'll end it how we always end it. Keep the faith, and boy, do we need this right now. Let's go Sox. Peace.